Now what I've gone ahead and done here is I've finished adding the text onto our menu plane, and as you can see we have the example name of the game up top, the engine tuning trainer. This is just serving as an example. And then our three menu options here: get started, which would play the game, credits, and exit. Now these aren't really doing much here right now. They're just text that I've added, and I've converted them to mesh, so they do render. As you can see, they render. The UV mapped image doesn't, but it will, and trust me on this, it will in the game mode. However, what I've gone ahead and done is I've modeled a wrench, and what this wrench is going to do, I'm going to import it right now. Here it is. It's going to serve as a prop of sorts to show the user, the person who's using the game, which menu option has been selected, and it gives the player a form of feedback. And what I'm going to do here is position it next to the first selection here, and I'm going to rotate it, give it a nice effect. What I want to do now is not only have the wrench next to the menu selection, but have it also rotate to serve as a form of animation, you know, live feedback, if you will. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to note the location rotation scale up here on the timeline, and I'm going to bring this bar over 20 frames, and I'm going to rotate the wrench upon the y-axis 180 degrees, and then I will put a key in there for the location, rotation, and scale. And as you can see, now it's rotating 180 degrees. So what I want to do now is make sure that it rotates a full 360 degrees. And if I mark the location, rotation, scale of the last 180 degrees being marked, we now have a full rotation of the wrench. Alright, so now, as you can see, we have a full 180 degree rotation right next to our Get Started button. So now what we want to do is create some form of logic for the wrench so it knows where it is within the menu. So let's say and 2 to credits, and say 3 to exit. So we're going to add a property of an integer to the wrench. We're going to name it menu, so it's going to be the menu selector, and we'll start it off with a value of 1. We're going to need to add some sensors, controllers, and actuators, and we're going to go ahead and add 3 sensors, one for menu equal to 1, for get started, 1 for menu equal to 2 for credits, and 1 for menu equal to 3. And what we're going to do is add a property to these and link that to menu and have the value coincide with the name, obviously. Menu 2 will also be a property. Link it to menu and value of 2. And for the last one, menu 3, also link it to menu with value of 3. So now that we have those set, we will start off by setting up the first menu selection, Get Started. So we're going to link that to our controller. From the controller, we're going to come over to an actuator and change motion, which is the actuator type, to the IPO. Now, if you remember from my last video, the IPO curve editor was the tool that I used in order to get the wheels turning and spinning correctly. As you can see, we have a IPO curve going on here that was set up using the timeline. And if you remember, we go back, that's the 360 degree rotation we have on our wrench. So if we go into our actuator type and select IPO, we can play this, and we're going to go to a loop stop and start at frame 1, and if you look up here, it ends at frame 40, so we will end it at frame 40. Now that we have this set up, if the property value is set to 1, the wrench should spin next to get started, as property value menu 1 is right next to get started. So if we go over here into our blender, and we play, we do indeed get our wrench spinning next to get started. And as you can see, it's a bit blurry, but like I said, this just serves as an example purpose. Now what we want to do is continue this and figure out a way that we can continue down to credits and exit and back up. So what we're going to do is we're going to lower the wrench, and we're going to lower it right next to credits here. And we're going to put in another keyframe, and I'm going to go to 60 with this to keep them evenly spaced out, and I should have done that before I moved it. So here we go, moving it again, and we're going to note the location, rotation, and scale next to credits. Now this starts at frame 60. We're going to continue another 20 frames to 80 and do the same exact steps that we did before. Rotate it 180 degrees, continue on next 20 frames. And continue this. Until we have done this for both credits and exit. Alright, skipping ahead, what I've done is I have continued along the timeline to make sure that there's a 360 degree turn next to each one of the menu selections. And as you can see, get started, credits, and exit all have that. So we could continue down to our node editor and continue to connect each one of the menu numbers 1, 2, and 3 to our separate controllers and actuators, and we will basically mimic what we have done, except with a few modifications. We're going to name the next one 60 to 100. And that's because frames 60 through 100, and only 60 through 100, spin the wrench next to number 2 credits. So we're going to start, obviously, at 60, the frames, and end frame 100. And that should play a loop stop from frame 60 to 100 next to credits. And indeed, menu number 2 is credits, so that's correct. That one is finished. Change this to loop stop and make sure that 120 through 160 is indeed next to exit. So we will change this to 120. Start frame 120 and end frame 160. Alright. So after that's all done, The only way we can change this now is by clicking in our property integer value in this box right here and selecting them by hand. However, that's no good because in the game you're going to either be using a mouse or a keyboard. So what we can do is we can add another sensor. In this sensor we're going to use the keyboard. Notice that we can use a joystick, also the mouse, and they have many more, but what we're going to do is use the keyboard. And when we go up, we want that to target menu. We're going to add another sensor, or controller, I'm sorry. And the actuator is going to be a bit different than the other ones. The actuator is going to be set as a property. And the value is going to be menu +1. And what that is going to do is when the up arrow is pressed, menu will have 1 added to its current value. So now we're going to add another keyboard sensor with the down arrow. Target will be menu. Add a controller and an actuator. Connect them. Change this property. Value will be menu. From the current value of menu. So if we go ahead and save this, head on over to our blend file. Alright, so with our logic nodes set up correctly, as you can see down here in Blender 2.5, we can now play this and use the up and down arrows. Pressing the down arrow will indeed move the arrow down, and once again down to exit, go up and down. However, we're going into a problem here. If we go down once more, now we have a value of 4. Exit was 3. If we go down, we have a value of 4 now. Go back up, we're back at 3, and it works correctly. And also, if we go up to the top, we now have a value of 1. 0 stops the wrench because there's no value assigned for the IPO curve at 0 or 4. So what we need to do is stop it from going below 1 or above 3.